I please invite Mr. Deepak Sharma, President and Chief Digital Officer, Kotak Mahindra Bank Limited, Mr. Mrityunjay Mahapatra, Member Board of Directors and Chairman, Audit Committee, Reserve Bank Innovation Hub, and we have Mr. Rajneel Malik, Partner, PwC. One of our speakers couldn't be here due to an emergency, but we shall make sure that this panel lives up to your expectations. Thank you so much. I'd like to hand it over to the expertise of our speakers.
Phones off first. Okay, thank you so much. I know this is the post-lunch session, so please be kind. But I do think we have a lot to talk about, so I'll try and make it, interesting and interactive. You see, we are sitting in 2023, but 2014 was an interesting year because, up until that time, most significant machine learning models, etc., used to be published by academia. In 2014, industry took over. So thereafter, every single year, most machine learning models has been developed and brought about by industry. Now, as someone has said, with great power comes great responsibility. So as we embark upon this journey, I have two esteemed panelists with me, and I'd like to tap into their experience in talking about how we can do this in a responsible fashion. But first, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. Esteemed panelists, business leaders, most exciting thing that you're working on in AI. Maybe you should start about that before we get into the other aspects of the whys and the wherefores. Either of you.
So I think one of the first things I would say is AI needs to be redefined, and we are realizing it's not artificial intelligence, but it's more of augmented intelligence. That's the first shift, because AI is here not to replace what we are doing on a day-to-day, but it's making it more efficient, and that's where most of the use cases are, because wherever we went thinking we'll be able to use stuff like NLP and AI to power conversational or automated decision, be it for credit, collection, monitoring, you realize it's still falling short. So I think we are increasingly finding more and more use cases where a human intelligence is supported with machine learning to make it more augmented intelligence. Thereby, you are making either, say, in use cases like the contact center agents when they manage customer query. How do we create a better interface between what customers want to know and what a human is trained to answer through scoring and analyzing in the real time? What is the query or the issue or the optimum way to resolve?
Yep.
Similarly, be it on a credit decision cycle, how do we look at alternate data along with the financial data to build a scorecard? But then you are not going and lending day zero basis, just that. You continue to use your current process, but you supplement with the additional ML models, and thereby increasingly start gaining that confidence. So I think all use case, be it on credit, risk monitoring, customer services and engagement, fraud risk and security, ALM, transaction monitoring, I think AI is getting used increasingly across financial service, but alongside the traditional workflows and processes and systems.
Mr. Mahapatra?
Well, to be very honest, I don't think AI or generative AI has yet entered that excitement, as we call it. It's pretty, people are dabbling their fingers into it, is more like spoken in the boardrooms after the ChatGPT has come. But real banking application, financial sector, because I sit in a bunch of boards, including insurance companies and asset reconstruction company, I don't see anything substantive happening, which is very exciting. For example, exciting is that, as they say, exciting is that, somebody getting killed, somebody getting fired, or some platform is getting redefined. I don't see that is happening. But amongst those unexciting things, which is more exciting, is probably, automation of routine things, like in the risk management. See, if we look, for example, a retail customer's journey, if at the first end or at the absolute beginning we do a potential screening, yes, AI is probably, as Deepak rightly told, wherever there is a chance of augmenting what a decision is to be taken, which path is to be taken, we are seeing some traction there. Similarly, there is something which is happening in the risk management area or IT for IT, where you do user experience, for example, whether using a little bit of artificial intelligence, which is again, I don't see people even distinguishing between a weak artificial intelligence and general intelligence or for whatever talks we are making. So my view is that I don't think it is time to expect excitement out of AI in the BFSI sector at least. Yes, but things may change, may not change.
Thank you for that. At the same time, I do think that there is generative AI. We spoke about that for a little bit. I think we should talk a little bit about. Well, I'm so happy, by the way, that our third speaker is able to join us. So please, welcome on stage. You want to welcome?
Check. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please put your hands together for Mr. Nalin Bansal? He's the Chief of Fintech, Corporates and New Ventures, National Payments Corporation of India. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us here.
Well, since you're late, maybe I'll start with you and put you on the spot. AI, generative AI, especially in the BFSI sector, how do you see, is it hype, is it real? We have heard two of the panelists talk about how it's still in the early phases. What's your perspective on how do you see this unfolding as of today?
Yeah, I think we, at least from an NPCI point of view, I can say that we have a slightly limited view on this, largely because we see in the context of payments. So there are consumer-facing products or products and processes where you are using AI, and then there are internal processes. I think if I focus on the customer-facing processes and our products, I think it's a limited area right now for us because we just launched the voice-based UPI, which is an assisted version actually. It just covers some part of steps that you would have normally done with your fingertips, but it doesn't take away the core. You can't really replace the person that you really are because that is required as part of your authentication. We've done some work around how do we reach out to consumers, maybe giving certain rewards. We launched a rewards platform on a chatbot, which kind of recognizes the consumer in some form and then gives him some rewards. So these are all assisted, maybe limited use cases, like Sir said, not something very substantial. But if one's look at more internal, I think there's great scope because what is process-driven can certainly be AI-driven. Whether these are disputes, these are settlements, these are chargebacks, or because there are some standard responses that you can work with. There is a scope there, and I think organizations only starting to realize what should they start with and not start with. So I think scope there for sure.
Thank you for that. Mr. Deepak ji, maybe I should turn to you. As companies think about using AI and generative AI in their processes, be it internal or external, how, from your experience, how do you think one should prioritize? What areas should they go after? What are some of the do's and don'ts that you would advise them about?
So again, I think here it's important for us to draw differentiation between GAI or Gen AI is not equal to AGI or artificial general intelligence. It's just normally spoken in the same way as if these are part of the same string. It's not. So I think when we are looking at Gen AI, it's more to generate a content, generate an outcome. These are not about predicting, building the ML model, but it's about the set of data you have. You use it to create You want to get a presentation, you want to build ability to read a particular report or a document and generate a credit proposal, or you probably want to read a legal document and draw the key inference. So I think the generative AI is increasingly we are seeing use cases are again defined more as a co-pilot. Back to what I was talking about, augmented. It's not about that you trust everything that comes out of Gen AI, but then it can get you a reasonable output of a higher accuracy, but not 100% accuracy, which still can be used as an input for you to manage an output. So for example, when I spoke about the use case of Copilot at contact center using a Gen AI, there is a lot of conversational data that is available between human agent and the customer. Now, a lot of times you see typically a problem statement across India, and it's not about bank or financial institution. There's a high turnover of contact center agents. Typically, you call any contact center of any company, and again, not banks alone. You have high hold time, the normal customer satisfaction rates are poor, the training is inadequate, one has multiple screens through which an agent has to toggle to probably find a response to a customer. So there is a genuine problem of how efficiently you would like to serve customer versus limitation. Now, if you pick up a use case, and that's how we started identifying, can the agent be trained better to handle customer query faster? If you can reduce your call handling time by 10 to 15%, it can straight away lead to a huge saving, rather than saying, I will use Gen AI to build a next-gen chatbot.
So I think with the business problem as opposed to the
business problem defined, and not necessarily think of it as more of a glamorous tools trying to showcase, but actually pick up what are your hard problems, and then start using it, deliver ROI. Because mind you, there is a high compute cost. It's not coming out pretty cheap, right? When you look at LLM models, you are trying to obviously go and rely more on the data, especially for banks. The data has to be, they are not using public data. So even the LLM models have to be used more on the proprietary financial data that you use. So I think one has to be mindful of the fact of what are the key bets where you would like to go and invest. So again, like we spoke about the credit monitoring, great use case. The whole RegTech space. Again, you see there is a fair amount of use of AI based on ML engine to predict, early warning system and look at how your credit portfolio is going to perform or the kind of delinquencies you are going to have. So I think one has to be very mindful of the fact that you're solving real world problem and have a clear ROI matrix in place before you are just committing significant investments towards both.
Very practical suggestions. Thank you. Mr. Mahapatra, maybe I should turn to you. AI, Gen AI, there is always any new technology, there is always this initial, as you said, lack of excitement. And this is not the first time, right? We were just discussing, we have seen many such things which are supposed to change the world but did not. Do you think this time it's any different, or this is just one of those things which will again go away? Given what Mr. Sharma just talked about, if you find the right use cases, find the business problem, do you think this time it's any different?
No, whether it is an additional choice, answer is most surely yes. The way that you could solve a business problem, the way that you can augment your strategy, the way that you can improve your go-to-market, there are many options, and AI definitely has added to the arsenal of the business leaders to achieve that objective. But your question is that whether it is one more hype. It is a mixture, like anything, is a mixture of hype and blessings. If somebody thinks today that AI is absolutely super intelligent, it is definitely a hype. If somebody thinks that AI will replace human beings, it is a super hype. If somebody thinks that AI is absolutely rock secure, it is a super hype. But if somebody thinks that it has supernatural or magic looking text processing capability, it is real. Can it take on massive amount of NLP and can deal with it? Yes, it's real. So, like we have seen, for example, blockchain or a cloud, many of these have not been able to transcend themselves. In fact, in my own two hands, when I was on the board of NPCI, we were thinking of having a blockchain or something like that. But somehow, as Deepak rightly told, because the use cases for problem solving has been resolved using more frugal and more popular and more simplistic technologies or alternate methods, so these are not gaining, and these are so computing power intensive, so much data intensive, and data is such a thing. We know that in the past 10 years, company after company are being accused of being data colonizers who have taken advantage of the lazy compromise of the users in giving a consent. Some they have acquired without consent. So how do you depend on something, some AI output, which has not been processed on coarser data? That is also another problem. So at best, again, as I told, we will have to be very careful in choosing which are the use cases. And at this moment, it looks like it will be assessed, as Nalin told, or augmented, as Deepak told. But purely on a standalone basis, I think we are quite far from it.
So maybe I should come to you, Mr. Bansal. Given that backdrop, how do you think a company that is planning its journey, what are some of the absolute do's and don'ts for day zero for such a newish technology?
No, do's and don'ts is that do will be start simple, start at the fundamentals. Do will be that, always I tell, that always examine the 4 pillars of any vertical. Do you have the people? Do you have the process? I think Mr. Ganesh Kumar told that every window of a new technology is a window of changing your processes. So people, do you have the skill base, or you will be guided by a few vendors to do a few POCs, and after that life will be back to normal? I think that will be tragedy rewritten. So define your people, define your process. Do you have computing power to spare? That is your technology. And of course your governance. How much money you want to put there? How much? So these are the do's, and don't is that, don't try to boil the ocean. Don't think that, don't neglect maintaining your existing technology stack, hoping that AI is coming, so I don't have to do anything for the next 2 years to maintain it, because AI is likely to replace. For example, if today a bank decides that early warning signal, we will not put new fields, we will not bring new things, or default prediction we will do not do anything because AI is coming to take over, then that will be tragedy. That is a big don't.
No, that's actually very often I see, I think you're also missing the same thing. I've seen many firms go after what they think is the coolest problem and not exactly as you mentioned, start where your chance of success based on the pillars is the highest or not. Mr. Bansal, your thoughts on this? You've seen this multiple times, your perspective.
Yeah. No, I think when we started, at least areas that I'm aware of where we started our experiments on these areas, I think one thing was very clear: build versus buy. One, of course, that we build a lot of our platforms ourselves in-house, but also to the fact that because Deepak mentioned about having the right ROI, there is no fancy solution out there. You will, if you are serious about, and there are significant processes that you would like to automate using certain form of AI, you will have to step into the build territory. You can buy a certain basic engine, some frameworks, work on a certain framework, but eventually you'll have to build internally, because these are customized processes. I don't think there's an open AI exists for an enterprise at a large level. And there shouldn't be one, ideally speaking. So if an organization is serious about AI, they should, I think, start focusing on building more internally. I think it's very simple. You don't have to do it just because everybody else is doing it. There has to be a reason for it. One more area where we started to implement this is our social media responses, where we built an internal chatbot to see if we can give some automated responses, do some language processing, saying that these are complaints, these are suggestions, or these are just general recommendations, and so how you can respond to that. But we don't still fully depend on that. There's always a maker checker. So don't fully depend. To what is coming down towards it. Don't fully depend. Even if you deploy a process, you will still need to have a maker checker. It can cut down some time, bring some efficiency, but it's always going to be some level of checker. You need to.
No, absolutely. I think you were also saying the same thing earlier on. We have 5 minutes left. I do want to talk a little bit about the operating model. One thing that has always intrigued me is what is the operating structure in a company which allows AI to succeed, AI, Gen AI, whatever it is, to succeed. And Mr. Mahapatra talked about having people as one of the key dimensions. Your thoughts on what is the operating model? So, for instance, who does the head of AI report to? However you want to define it.
So I think there are 3-tier structure. I was just talking to a team in Bangalore yesterday, and often there is a confusion about what is this? There's a new role that has come up in some organization called Chief AI Officer. I mean, they were just trying to understand what does this do, what is data science role, and then what is the Chief Data Officer role. So I just drew a very simple one, and I'll probably talk about it. I think the foundational stuff is having someone to head data. Data is an asset. So just like you have a vault and you have somebody who's looking at all the information and data, be it external data, internal data, anonymization, encryption, the whole data privacy architecture around that, the compliance, customers' right to withdraw consent, provide consent, ensuring that whatever the data that is being used in terms of aggregation, anonymization is all put together. So that's the foundational layer. A lot of organizations that I know of, they still don't have someone who's first ensuring that you have, and including obviously stuff like your data warehouse or data lake, or whatever are the core data infrastructure that you are building. On top of that is your next level of governance comes in. That's about the set of people who are the analytics and data science folks, who are consuming this data to build models and outcomes and do the validations and create a value. Either they're building it for credit, for risk, for customer engagement, for marketing, because they need a mix of the domain understanding. At the same time, this exists more as a center of excellence. But then center of excellence cannot sit in isolation, because if you are working on the marketing analytics, you need to also understand the marketing piece as much as you understand. Or if you are using it for protecting your internal infrastructure, say from the cloud, or probably your security, then you need to work with the cloud COE or the CISO. So depending on which functional area are you using your core analytics, you need to get embedded. And that's where largely it's the dual line reporting or the matrix works in, because you are working alongside business, but you run it as a COE. The third part is now, which is about the whole AI. And AI again is coming on the responsible AI. How do you make sure that there are no biases? It's not a black box, and thereby you are able to go back and look at how the certain outcomes came. So I think this is again becoming more of a governance and a bit of a compliance role to make sure that you stay closer to being responsible. Very early in India, but in some of the markets, especially US, this role has started to become important, because everybody is saying, how do you remove the cognitive bias and ensure that, what are the outputs? You can go back and audit. So I think these roles in my mind will continue to evolve, but these are 3 or 4 key roles that organizations will have between data, custodian, data science, analytics, and AI, and of course the business verticals who are going to be the end consumer of it.
Very practical, thank you. Mr. Mahapatra, maybe I can turn to you. on the back of what Mr. Sharma said, do you see new roles emerging, the way, maybe different organizations emerging as we deal with this new technology?
In my experience, what at the board level talk that we are seeing is that like in case, for example, in case of data and all, I think initially this will be housed in the IT vertical. Because we will require a bunch of people, data technologists, computing power, mostly working on data. Unless there is a specified data vertical which has emerged and in an organization there are data specialists. So I think initially, because I see that in the next 2 years at least, this will go through pilots, POCs, limited use case implementation, diving into the shallow end of the pool and like that. So for that, I think somebody who is familiar has to take up the role as an adjacent role on which administration and governance will be easy. So for the next 1 or 2 years, I don't see that, like chief AI officer or anything coming up. No. However, as things pick up, I see roles getting defined at the regulator, supervisor, policy making, at the industry body. For example, I see roles getting created in Confederation of Indian Industry or, industry bodies, because community knowledge will be required for helping people and communities to navigate through all these things, because there will be so much of hype, there will be so much of problem. So community initiatives will come. Regulatory roles will precede operating roles. In the operation, I think people will try to provide this responsibility of making together all the things into somebody who is familiar into it, whether IT or the data space. That's what I'm saying.
Thank you so much. Mr. Bansal, last thoughts, and maybe we can get a couple of questions from the audience if time permits.
Yeah, I think given that we all tend to agree to the fact that this is a supportive technology, there could be support tools. I think we realize that it starts with IT. So I've also said it starts with IT, but eventually they are now turning to be SMEs. It doesn't need to be a big function anymore. You just need some experts to guide the teams around. And I think AI would become like you have an HR business partner, you could have a finance business partner. Eventually you would have a AI business partner. You could have a data scientist business partner who will help a certain business unit function to be able to build what you want to build. That's the thinking that I think we are moving to. And of course, you will have some data scientist or AI scientist or SME to help you through the models that you would like to build. But end of the day, that should be. It's like saying that coders should be sitting with businesses rather than sitting in a separate division altogether. So I think that's our viewpoint, largely speaking.
Perfect. Thank you. Do we have time for questions or no? One question. Anyone from the audience? Well, it is certainly after lunch. Maybe one last takeaway for the audience?
So I think there are a lot of new businesses are going to come out of it, for sure. So if there are startups, or if there are people thinking of how to leverage this opportunity, be it around the data privacy and consent architecture or leveraging and building the data-led models, scorecards. So I think depending on how one is thinking about it, but just don't get fascinated only by AI. Look at this overall as an opportunity around data and information and how it creates value.
Well, with that, thank you so much, everyone, for this very engaging discussion. I do think this is just the beginning of, well, maybe the AI era. But as the esteemed panel mentioned, there is a lot more to be done and not just AI. And it is not a cool thing that will solve everything. There are other support things that first need to be taken care of for this to really, really materialize and achieve its true potential. But I do think BFSI will be the better for AI. So let's commit to taking these lessons forward in our daily lives. Thank you so much.
Thank you, gentlemen. May I request you please come together for a group picture? Thank you so much to our speakers and our session chairs for taking the time out and joining us here for this conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, would you be kind enough to give them a resounding applause just for being here this afternoon?